Hello, this is Greg at Reserve My Court. And in this video today, we're going to talk a little bit about how to make a cancellation rule. This is part of a series on each of our rule types. And so I want to show you first where I am. I'm under Club Settings, then I'm under Amenity Rules and Fees, and then I'm going to hit this Add Rule button. And I'm going to select the rule type. And the third one on the list here is Cancellation. And I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to say something like 2 hours before start, cancel. And so I always recommend giving a name to be something you'll recognize later and understand what it means. And so a couple notes on cancellation. If you do not create a cancellation rule, just like really with all our rules, if you don't create a rule, then your users can cancel their reservations whenever they want. And that includes in the past. So a reservation they created 3 days ago or that they had for 3 days ago, they could go back in and cancel. And for a lot of clubs, this is not a problem. They don't really need to necessarily restrict when their users can cancel their reservations. But I would say in particular, if you, and I'll have another video on this, but if you're creating a rule that's a quantity type rule and you limit your users to say 1 reservation per day or 3 reservations per week or whatever, you also need to create a cancellation rule, because otherwise your users will effectively have unlimited reservations, even though you've tried to restrict it, because all they need to do is make a reservation, show up for the reservation, and then once they know they have the court, nobody's coming, they can just cancel their reservation. And now they get another reservation. So the point is that you may or may not need this cancellation rule, but if you use the quantity rule, I definitely recommend that you create a cancellation rule. So in this case, we'll say we're going to create a rule that says you allow the reservations to be canceled up to 2 hours before the start. So I'm going to hit next. You can apply this rule to very specific times of the day if you wish, but in most cases, I don't think that's going to be an issue. So if there were maybe some really prime times and you were really made sure that in those times we don't allow people to just cancel willy-nilly, you could do that, but in most cases you're going to be probably restricting to all times of the day. So I'm going to leave that there. If you do select a time period, make sure that you understand that the start time and the end time has to be after the start time. And midnight is the start of the day. So really, maybe we should make some changes here, but you can't really have a rule that runs from midnight to midnight, because midnight is the start of one day and midnight is the start of another day. So if you really wanted this to kind of be all day long, you would have to do something like 12 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. So I just want to caution that I do see some people setting up some rules and they'll say 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. and that is honestly going to confuse the software a bit. So make sure that your end time is after the start time, and if you're trying to get all day in there, if you're trying to get all day, then just do all times, right? You don't really need to use these specific times. Okay, so we're going to go all times, and we're going to go 2 hours. So I'm putting in 2 there, and I'm going to leave this at hours. You could make this days or minutes. If you wanted to do a certain number of minutes, you can do that. And in this case, I'm going before the reservation start time, but you could do after the reservation start time as well. So you could allow people to cancel after the start of a reservation. I would tend to go before, simply because, again, if you're having a quantity rule and you allow people to cancel after the reservation starts, they're probably, if they're really trying to game the system, they'll go in, create the reservation, show up for the reservation, and then wait till after it's started and cancel it, and nobody else is going to show up and make a reservation at the very, very last minute. So anyway, I'm setting it to 2 hours before the reservation start time. I'm going to hit next. This rule is going to go in effect immediately, and it's going to never end. Again, if you watch some of our other videos, if this rule is seasonal or you don't want it to start until, say, 3 weeks from now or whatever, or just run through the end of the year, you can apply when this rule goes into effect and when it ends, but for the most part you're going to be selecting starts immediately and never ends. And again, you could apply it to specific days of the week if you want. I'm going to apply it to all 7, and I'm going to apply it to all my courts, and then I'm going to say, and again, this may be something you probably wouldn't necessarily apply to your super admin role, because you want to have that flexibility of going in and canceling reservations later. So let's say some people you do have a rule that restricts people to, say, a few reservations per week, and you don't allow them to cancel more than, say, an hour in advance or something. And then they get rained out at the very last minute, and your member calls you and says, "Hey, I got rained out, and I need my reservation back so that I can make another one later in the week," you would probably need to go in and then make that cancellation for them. So generally, you wouldn't necessarily apply it to you. I'm going to apply it here now just so you can see the effect of it. But again, probably you would not set any kind of cancellation rule for yourself as a super admin. Okay, so I set this up to allow cancellation for up to 2 hours before the start of the reservation. And so we'll go to the club schedule. So I'm going to go on to today's schedule here, and I'm going to create a reservation. And you can see this is my current time. So I'm just going to put one out here for like just a little bit later today here. And then I'll make this. And now if I go to cancel this reservation, because it's not more than 2 hours, I don't have that 2 hour limit that I set in there, you'll see I get this. You must cancel edit reservations at least 2 hours before the reservation start time. So I don't have that window here, but if I made one later in the day here, like let's go out here to 4 o'clock just to be safe. I made that one, and this one should allow me to cancel with no problem here. And there's also some limitations on what you can do when you edit that reservation as well. So you obviously can't just go in and change the times of it and that sort of thing. So if people don't affect the change they want within that rule period that you've set up, then they're gonna be shut out of that. So anyway, that's how the cancellation rule works. As always, if you have any questions about that particular rule or any of the other rules that we have, or just questions in general about Reserve My Court, we're happy to answer those. You can reach me at 678-880-9042. You can also always email me. That's Greg at reservemycourt.com. Thanks again.